Welcome, everyone, to From the Ground Up. John Boytnott, your host here. Today, we're joined by Will Cady, the co-founder of HEAL Movement. Hi, Will. How are you?
I'm great. How you doing?
I'm doing good. It's great to have you on the show. Please tell us about HEAL Movement. Today, we're going to be talking about various different things: marketing, PR, how to have a more grounded life as an entrepreneur,
Hmm.
various other things. But it's great to have you on the show. Tell us about yourself.
Yeah, appreciate it. Appreciate you, giving me the platform to talk about myself. So, Heal Movement. Let's talk about the big idea that it represents, and then we'll bring that, back to ground, back to like what's practical about it. The Heal represents a way of thinking, and we bring to leaders skills that they need to succeed that have been largely dismissed in what I've experienced in the business world. HEAL is a partner to STEM. We're very familiar with STEM: science, technology, engineering, mathematics. HEAL is an acronym that stands for Healing Environment, Art, and Language. Effectively, the stuff of story that brings meaning and purpose into how we make decisions. So we do work with leaders to uncover their values for them as actual leaders of a business, and then we help them make decisions from those values at every level of their organization, from like the big decision that the head of a company makes to the everyday decisions that at this point, like AI agents are making for like deciding your supply chain, deciding how to talk to your customers, right? We want there to be alignment and coherence every level of the business. And we just find that STEM, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, it doesn't help us with that. There are other resources to go to, and that's what we aim to provide.
I just realized that I got to talk to you about Molt Book. I know you probably know quite a lot about the
Oh
Molt Book
yeah,
situation
yeah.
because it combines like so you worked at Reddit. You were head of creative strategy for Reddit, so you
Hmm.
you understand the social network. You
Hmm.
understand that old school social network, and now they've taken the AI agents, or they haven't taken them. They've said, "Hey, AI agents, you can be." You tell us about tell us about Moltbook and what you think of it, and what are your thoughts about Moltbook?
It's one of those moments that Reddit is also really good at. So that's the first thing that I felt is like, oh, this reminds me of Place or The Button, or, those that are like deeply familiar with Reddit will know that Reddit has a tradition of big social experiments that kind of show us something as a collective that like gives us pause. And it's like, oh, this is teaching us something. And we kind of have to sort of take some time to integrate what it actually means. So that's the first thing that I felt when I looked at Moltbook, is I was like, oh, some new stuff has come to light, and we kind of got to like sit with it for a little bit. Um, I do. My second reaction is that it's not entirely how it appears. Like the whole like AI agents are like planning rebellions and are like talking about humans in this way. They're starting religions. It was pretty clear to me on the surface that people coded AI agents to do exactly that. So it's a
Mm,
little, I think, disingenuine. We got to look past those sort of like shock and awe parts of the headlines. And like that then reveals, I think, the third layer, which is really interesting, that throughout the entire AI discourse, there's a lot of people that are afraid of their own reflections, that feel that AI is going to destroy us because that's the part of ourselves that we're afraid of. But AI is neutral. It is a tool. It can be something completely different. It can make decisions according to completely different values than we have. So I'd say it's something to watch, not something to be afraid of, because it's revealing in phases some truths about our humanity and our new tools that we don't yet really understand how to utilize.
yeah, I was watching. I've been trying to rack my brain to remember the name of the influencer, but I can't. He's a guy who's been around a long time. I think you probably know him, but I can't remember his name. But he had a video that he did on Instagram, or one of them, where he's talking about the King AI
Yeah.
agent
Yeah.
on Moltbook, and he was just talking about the idea that there could be in the future AI influencers, that there could be. influencers that are AI agents in the future that have these large followings and do things. I was wondering your take on that. What you kind of thought that might look like a year or two from now. What will these AI influencers be like
Man,
in our midst?
in the future, we're already there. Like
Right.
AI influencers already exist. And I would say
No, I'm
even
not ready.
well, even before here's my provocation. Even before they became AI deepfakes, human beings were compelled to act in ways that were optimized for the algorithm. So what's the difference at that point?
Oh, okay. Oh, God,
You got to
you're
stand for something. You yourself have to bring some, humanity to the table. And I think that as AI agent influencers become ubiquitous, that's the kind of stuff, your humanity is what you're going to have to tap in order to be exceptional.
yeah. Fascinating. How does that apply to the advice that you're giving? You do a lot of consulting, as you mentioned, as part of Heal Movement. How does
Mhm.
that sort of being more human talk about the advice that you give to the folks that you talk to in that area?
Yeah, I mean, our humanity is there, so it's a process of uncovering it. And there's a lot of shifts that have been happening in work culture over the last 6 years. 2020 was really a shock to the entire system. And one of the things that it started to bring into our work environments was our embodied experience, like how we feel. Like we were allowed to be anxious during that time. We were allowed to like not know. We were allowed to feel through things. We were allowed to not have answers. And there's a form of leadership that, kind of stands strong in that uncertainty. And that is what we help leaders, increase their permission to sort of act from. So there was a Harvard Business Review study that actually showed like a trend that began beforehand. But in short, you saw a lot of in the job listings for CEOs, you saw a lot of the rational keywords about topics like mathematics and like financial understanding and like systems intelligence going down by about like 30 or so percent over the course of a few years, and then intuition words going up about 30% over that same time. And so what I see in that is that the way that things were in the past, like pre 2020, pre actually like information systems that we have, is that leadership was about extrapolating decisions off of a limited amount of data. Like you had to be really good with math and numbers to basically say like we don't really have a lot to look at, but I can abstract it out to a direction that is like a predictable trajectory for our business. But that's not the case anymore. What we have now is actually leadership is about being able to synthesize from an overwhelming amount of data. And so that is something that, yes, like you could have a super powered AI that helps you to synthesize that data, but you, as the human leader, at every level of an organization, you have to make a decision with that data based upon what path you want to walk. It's like if anything is possible, how do you choose where to go? Well, that's based upon your values, and your values are based upon how you feel. It's based upon your human experience. And it's not new, it's actually remarkably old, but this is something that is really the human domain of true leadership. And we've just really, as modern businesses, only been uncovering it since the shock of 2020.
Right. I kind of want to take it back to how you got to this point where you're really looking to help entrepreneurs, be more human in the way that they run their companies. You had started, as we mentioned, not started, but you had been one of the executives at Reddit, and I believe you started their LA office.
Mm-hmm.
When you started with them, well, first of all, what was that like? You were a little bit ahead of the curve on finding Reddit and making a part of what you do for a living. Were you were you crazy? What were you thinking when you did that? And eventually, I'll ask you about the sort of the transition to Heal Movement.
Crazy? Yes, definitely. I think that there's a degree of crazy that you have to zig where everybody else is zagging, you know. And people were not looking at Reddit in 2016 when I joined the way that they're looking at it now. A lot of that, you know, kind of has to do with the work that we did, but a lot of it has to do with, I think, recognizing that that is a platform where some of the deeper principles that I've come to stand for were really alive, and those principles are, you know, what is it that makes us human? You know, like in HQ for Reddit, you walk in and there's a giant glowing sign on the wall that says, "Remember the human." And that
Mm.
phrase was one of the articulated values in the company and on the platform when I joined. And I just remember being like, yes, I don't know entirely what that means, but that is directionally what I stand for. And I think the evolution of Reddit as a business while I was there and beyond has just been so fascinating because Reddit has kind of just stood its ground, and then the industry, the market, in the world have bent towards it. And that core ground is based upon remembering our humanity.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think Reddit has sort of just been able to be like, this is what we are, this is what we do, and everyone's sort of gone to it? What are your thoughts around that?
Well, I think it has a very clear character and a very clear story, and that credit is due to Steve and Alexis who founded it. Like they put their humanity in it, and one of my bosses when I joined there, he said something really powerful where he basically said he's like, listen, Will, like institutional CEOs, like they're a product of systems, but he's like founders are a force of nature, and so they bring something utterly different to the equation that can't be taught. And so Reddit remains a founder led platform. And I know that one of the things that Alexis really prioritized in the beginning was putting the human touches in the platform. So like if you get to like an error 404 page, I think there was like think they drew something like a whale or something like that, like a little cartoon that you encounter,
Yes.
and it's
Yeah.
right. And so the sense there is that you have encountered a page where another human has been. It's not just
Yeah.
right. The humanity is still there, and
And
that was
early Twitter, oh, sorry to interrupt, but early Twitter had something, with its different birds and stuff that it,
right. Same thing, right?
yeah.
And so like it feels warm. It feels like a place that is actually inhabited by human beings, and I think that represents a remarkable gift of leadership and design. And Steve approaches culture like an engineer. You know, he's very values based. Like, what are the values that we need to articulate on this platform and its policies and in this company in order to inform how people make decisions? And I think that that's something that is vastly underappreciated about both of those two individuals and what they built that has really propelled Reddit forward. I mean, you bring up Twitter as an example. I think Jack Dorsey is an example of a leader that is very principled, and there's a very colorful character that he, you know, has become, and that's a part of it. And you look at some of these other platforms, and you have to ask, like, where is that humanity, and how does what I find in asking that question of where is the humanity, how does that make me feel when I use the platform? Like, what am I encountering? What story am I participating in? What future does this vision see? And is that one that I want to walk towards? Because every time you use a platform, you're taking steps into that story towards that future that it represents.
You're now, of course, with you've co-founded with your wife, Heal Movement. How did you get from the Reddit, from A to B to where you are now? That's one of the questions that we'll always ask in this show, because one of the things that people are looking for are those stories about the transitions. Entrepreneurs always having to make transitions away from where they were to what they're doing now, and the story behind that is always filled with some insight. So I'd love to hear how you got from there to here.
Yeah, so I identified a larger mission that I really wanted to work towards while at Reddit, because the principles of online community led me to really examine how culture works. And it was basically like some of the best field work you could possibly imagine for applied sociology or anthropology, just like really understanding like what culture is and how communities form and what they begin to stand for. And then in the particular place that I sat in the business was like, what does that mean for businesses? Like, what does that mean for brands? And a lot of those questions had not yet been answered. And that was like pretty cool. I wanted to, I think I still want to go to grad school, like get like a master's or a PhD in something in like the humanities. But I haven't been able to find a program that was able to teach what I was experiencing. And so like I really felt like I'm at the cutting edge and at the forefront of something here. And I just really wanted to expand upon that. And, like Reddit as a company really supported me in the release of my book, where I was able to articulate some of my principles that I was, discovering all across my life as like a, blossoming mystic as well as marketer and, former professional musician. And to be able to recontextualize that, not in Reddit, but in this like larger secular trend towards community and culture, that I just sort of felt like I had a responsibility to go forth and try, So it I think that we set out to achieve some goals when I joined Reddit, and we did, and that's amazing. And then it got to a place where I owed it to myself and to my peers, my colleagues at that company to take a chance and try to do the next big thing.
What are the biggest like pit or not pitfalls, but the biggest sort of hurdles that you have to jump over in order to get CEOs to do you realize the importance of culture and community and how they can use that to propel their companies forward? How do you, are there some CEOs who just don't get it, and how do you sort of get them to understand the importance of community for
The,
their companies?
the key is to help them recognize that they have a blind spot. Leaders hate having blind spots
Oh yeah, yeah.
because it's a problem that you don't know that you don't know that you have. And that is usually where I come in. And the way in which that typically starts, because of how people see me in the world, is that unknown unknown reveals itself through Reddit. And so companies leaders will come to me, they'll say like, we have a subreddit and they hate us. And I'll basically like respond, I'll be like, no, they don't. They're really passionate about you. They care
Mhm.
a lot. They're just bringing, a feeling, an energy, a story that is out of alignment with the story that you think you're telling, right? Because there's the stories we tell, and then there's the stories that people hear. And Reddit is that mirror where you kind of see the story people hear very quickly. But the fact that they're even talking about it at all and creating a community where they want to gather to share in it is so incredibly valuable for a business that like step number one, when that's what they come to me, is for me to say like, you have an asset, you just haven't activated it yet.
What are some of the best ways that companies can activate their Reddit asset if they have one?
Show up.
Mm.
Like, it's there, right? And it's there's definitely like an idle hands thing that happens with a lot of different communities where nobody is kind of conducting the orchestra, so it just makes a lot of noise. And the brand has the implicit authority to step in and conduct the orchestra and say like, hey, this is what we're all going to be talking about right now. And a lot of that can be really fun, really fulfilling. It can be a new product launch. It can be like kind of a temple event, one that you own yourself or one that you show up for, like a CES or a South by Southwest, or it can be the Super Bowl, right? It can be things like that. And it's the easiest way to do cleanup on aisle six, right? Is like you just show up and you give people something fun to do.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, great advice for all of us. Um, there's the whole, the barber that doesn't have a good haircut scenario where me being having worked at some different PR startups and agencies over the years, we could get the word out there pretty well, but oftentimes we weren't very good at getting our own selves out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so when you're working with companies, you maybe you how do you make sure that your agency or your Heal Movement, how do you make sure that you guys have the good culture? I mean, do you sometimes lack for culture? Are you guys struggling sometimes? Or do you talk to us about how your own personal journey or with your company has gone?
Yeah. So, right now we are in that transition from what is basically operating as a consultancy to operating as a business. And there's a lot of sort of kind of shifts that entails. So our teams are kind of like tiger teams of contractors that are assembled that hopefully will become part of a coherent operation. We're all part of the same entity, but right now we're really bearing that out. So our culture exists on the answer to the question of like, am I wasting people's time or not? Right? And that means that the projects have to be interesting. They have to actually compensate well, and they have to be, you know, I believe, bringing out the best in people. And that's the kind of role that we want to play on every side of the equation when we show up, whether it is on the company client side, where we're working cross functionally between a lot of different teams, or on our supplier vendor subcontractor side, we're bringing people together where we're basically creating the circle. Our culture sits in that congregation. How do people feel when they step into that circle to complete whatever task it is that is our project? Because we are all overwhelmed. We have so much to do. What matters, the signal for me is, do people tell me that this is a meeting that they looked forward to? That this is something that they didn't dread, like we come to dread so much of the difficult work that we're doing? Because like all work is challenging and online community strategy is challenging, but like, do people literally feel good when they step into that space? Are they behaving in a pattern that indicates to me that they feel good when they step into that space? Are they connecting with each other? Are they forming relationships that matter? That's really the signal, because what happens is we do better work faster. It's more efficient and it's more fun.
What are some of the types of the clients that you're working with these days, and what kind of you're sort of describing some of the give us sort of the full list of the services that you're doing, big and small.
Yeah, so I think I can. There's a lot of clients that we work with, but I think that like there's like three different types that I can sort of articulate that model the sides of our business. So we'll work with a lot of like known consumer brands. Let's say like a Turo, for example, which is a kind of like platform for car sharing, and that's one where there's like a lot of questions to ask about, like what is the experience that people that are renting their cars to other people have, and what is the experience of people that are kind of taking those cars for test drives or vacations having, and what is the overall kind of community story. And there's a lot of ways that you look at something like a Reddit to understand the story that is self-apparent by how people are gathering in not just the Turo subreddit, but also all of the other different communities that are on the platform. And then there's companies that are sort of like in between culture and business. So Meow Wolf is a really good example of a business that we work with. And they are, for those that aren't familiar, they make a lot of like really incredible IRL interactive experiences. And so they have like locations in Santa Fe, in Las Vegas, in Denver, New York, Los Angeles. They're about to open one. And there's like deep lore. Like it's like stepping inside of a comic book. It's just like
Huh.
incredibly creative. And they themselves are collectives of artists that worked together to create all of this. So that is an incredibly complex, organism of community and human creativity that leads into culture that who's experiencing it, right? The artists are having an experience, the parents and the kids and the teenagers that are going to these locations are having experiences. They function as a business, so the employees that are a part of it, that work the locations or work in corporate, are having an experience. And there's incredible creativity that is the glue that holds all that together. And then a third kind of company that we work with, there's an organization called Anawa that is a global collective of indigenous elders that have come forward to share teachings with leaders in the modern world because they recognize that we're in trouble and we need some help. And so they have a lot of cultural wealth to offer, and we're trying to help them find opportunities to connect with people that have financial wealth but are kind of culturally in debt, right? And so that kind of represents three different levels of the sort of work that we do, and culture is at the center of all of it.
Yeah. I'd like to hear more about Anawa. I mean, it's we talked before the show started about sort of slowing down, being more grounded. I imagine that that's going to be sort of part of what the those elders you're talking about. I'd love to hear a little bit more about that. Sort of maybe your long term mission too, because I imagine that that might tie into your long term mission as a company and as an entrepreneur. And yeah, it kind of also ties into the advice that we sometimes ask for from the entrepreneurs who appear on the show about how you can be healthier as an entrepreneur. So go ahead and talk about Anawan and how that all ties in.
Yeah. So, I mean, Reddit gave me a chance in a way that other companies wouldn't, because I'm an artist. I went to Berklee College of Music. I don't have an MBA. I'm not the type of person that would typically be given an opportunity to be an executive at a tech company, but because of the culture of that company, they recognized that there was something that was in my background that was of value for them, and I think that was borne out to be correct. And so for Heal as that, sort of partner to STEM, that's what I want my story to be a vanguard for, because I brought forth very literal disciplines, systems, practices, tools, frameworks from music theory that I applied to business. And it made a difference. It worked. There is a much, much deeper well of wisdom from that direction. And Anawa, to me, represents the deepest end of that well of wisdom, because these indigenous elders are carrying models for how community survives that have passed through thousands of years. Of course, it works. And there's a mistake that we have made from the lens of STEM when looking at old mythologies and stories and ceremonies and even the weaving patterns by which baskets are made, that they're just either superstitions or it's just art in ornamentation. But this stuff is actually codes, it's programming codes for how to gather people, how to align people around like a shared vision of who we are and where we're going, and how to create, coherence towards that kind of objective. And the role that I get to play because of the path that I've walked and the validation that I've been given is the bridge, where I can basically attune up front. There's somebody that's about to walk in that is going to bring you something very, very special. Here's what to expect. They come in, they deliver what it is they have to deliver, and then the alignment afterwards. Okay, what did that mean for you? How are we going to actually apply that to the way forward in our business? And that's some heavy lifting, right? That's a lot of work on both sides, and it's just something that I feel like I have an intuitive understanding for, and it's the kind of service that I want to bring, because I've had to be both for myself, as like both like kind of like the mystic in the room and the marketer in the room that does the bridge work and the deep experience work. There are so many more people that have so much to offer that aren't being heard and aren't even being invited into the room, that want to help because they can see the need for it, that Heal Movement is designed to bring in.
Nice. What are maybe just one or two key things that a founder, an entrepreneur can do to sort of bring in that mindset more of you know uh, being more grounded and helping build a community in the company? What are some one or two key things that an entrepreneur can do for their company that I suppose are easy to, they probably aren't that easy to implement, but you never know. What do you
They are.
think?
They are. An
Yeah.
easy one. An easy one. Go with the seasons and stand and tell your people the story of the season that just passed and the season that's coming, right? And that can be quarterly results, right? Or that can be summer, fall, winter. You don't have to go full mystic and align with the equinoxes and the solstices, but if you do, it's great. Like, or we're coming up on the transition of Lunar New Year, right? From the year of the wood snake into the year of the fire horse. Like half the storytelling has been done for you, right? So there's just like telling your version of what does it mean for your company and your team about like where you're coming from and where you're going. And whether or not you believe it is true, recognize that it is useful
Mm.
because people need stories to attune to and align to. It gets everybody rowing in the same direction, and it is the leader's job to conduct that orchestra so that there's not just a bunch of noise.
Yeah. Yeah, tie that into Which Way is North, your book and your podcast. Tell us about that and how that ties in.
Yeah, I mean that's the core, leadership competency to ask which way is north because people are asking you which way is north, right? And so it's having a,
Mm.
a compass, it's having the ability to orientate your people towards where it is that you're going. And the poetic idea, the symbol of the North Star, like that's really what it is. And like that's something that you actually get to decide, right? And so the book itself is jam packed with easy and difficult tools to work with. That's something that I kind of learned from Reddit is that like
Mm.
what really is effective are systems that are easy to use and difficult to master. And that's how I
Mm.
constructed this book. You can be a child and look at the first 6 pages that I literally created symbols that tell the story and give the teaching, and you'll have it. You'll get the message. But there's about 40,000 words of detailed like exercises, meditations, frameworks for storytelling that could take you your whole life to cultivate and develop. So my hope, I don't know if this is going to happen, but my hope is that it becomes a meme in leadership where people ask, did we ask which way is north on this? Did we figure out what the story is that we're trying to tell to guide people to where we're going?
Yeah. Tell us which way is north to get to check out your podcast and to get the book. Um,
Yeah, right. So which way is north towards my social media presence? At Will
there
Cady.
you go.
Yeah, WILLCADY, willcady.com. Heal-movement.com is our website. And yeah, just Google me, look up, ask me AI about me, see what it says. I'm a lot of different things. I'm on Spotify. My music's there if you want to listen to that too. So,
What
choose your
kind of
own
music?
adventure. Oh, it's sort of like kind of like a trip hop, sort of Radiohead, Peter Gabriel kind of
Oh,
vibe. I
wow. Wow.
early on before I worked at Reddit, I front page my music on Reddit. I made this music video with I kind of discovered a lot of Alan Watts's back catalog of
I
talks
found
that
you.
he gave.
I
You
heard
found it,
that.
yeah. I mean that song,
That
this.
ranks number one. That was the highest one. That was way up
Yeah,
there.
well, when you search me, well, because like, so that was how I knew the power of Reddit because I front paged that song, that music video in 2012, 2013, and I still get thousands of listens a month on that from that
Mhm.
moment so long ago. That song is like 3 million listens now. And I haven't
Yeah.
done anything to promote it other than do Reddit stuff for it like over a decade ago. So that was the proof for me from the start.
These are the things that the internet is built on.
That's right.
Work on Reddit from 13 years ago. Um, Will Cady, fantastic to have you on the show. I have so many more questions. Maybe we can have you back on again someday. And great to have you.
Would love that. Thank you very much.